In this video, we are going to put together all our learning from this chapter and create two different scenes and learn how to navigate between two of them back and forth. Let's start by creating a new folder. To do that, right click in your assets folder and go to create and click on folder. Call it scenes and enter to save the name. Now let's create a new scene and we are going to make two of these and save them inside the scenes folder. Now let's save the scene inside our scenes folder. We are going to call this one as game scene. Let's type game and hit save. Now let's create a new scene and we are going to save it as menu. Let's go to scenes folder and save it as menu. Hit save. Now we are going to create the UI panel inside our menu. Let's switch to 2D mode. Now first of all we are going to create a UI canvas. We can do that by going into game object as well, and we can use the create drop down as well. Go to UI and we have canvas over here. Now if we select canvas and in our components we see we have a rect transform instead of simple transform, and all the values are being disabled because these are already being managed by the canvas component and the canvas scaler component. Next, let's just double click it and you will see that the canvas already appears on the whole screen. If we change our screen to 1024 and 768, you will notice that canvas size changes it to automatically. If we increase or decrease the scale, the scene automatically changes the canvas size. Now inside our canvas we are going to add a panel. The panel acts as a background for our canvas and by default it takes over all the space. We have a source image attached to our panel and it takes up all the space inside our canvas. You will notice the anchor points are being stretched to the corners. Then we have color. Here we can select the color of our background image or the panel. Let's set it to something we want. Let's set it to black and we can change the transparency over here as well. Now our background is of full black color. Now let's go to our panel, right click and go to UI and we are going to add a text to our screen. Let's click on the text and it will be added. Here you can see that the text element is being placed in the center of our screen, and if we check our inspector we have a color property. Let's change it to white so we know how it looks like. Now let's just click on the text and change our text to some game name. Let's say a demo game, for example. This is going to be our title of the game. We can change the font by clicking over here, and we by default have just Arial font inside our game. We can simply import these fonts the same way we imported other assets to our game, and it will appear down here. Then we have font style. Let's change it to bold. Then we have font size. We can change it to whatever we want. Let's just change it to something so we can see it bigger. Let's change it to 20. Then we have a line spacing. To see it in action we have to have another line inside our text. Let's just add something game 2. Let's just stretch it down so we can see the other line as well. Our line spacing is too much. Let's just decrease it a bit, and you can see that if we take it to the negative side it just takes the other line above the first line. Let's just set it to 1. Next we have a rich text checkbox. If we set it to true, we can use emoticons and colors inside our text. Next up we have the settings for paragraph. The first setting we have is alignment, and here we can set the vertical or horizontal alignment of our paragraph. Let's just set it to center and set the vertical one to center as well. Next up is align by geometry checkbox. Then we have horizontal overflow, which can be set to wrap or overflow. Then we have vertical overflow, which can be set to truncate and overflow. Next is best fit. If we set it to true, we get two minimum size and maximum size values of our font size. We can use this to automatically resize our font size according to the screen size of our game. Next thing we have is the color of our text, and we can set our material to our text as well. Then we have a raycast target checkbox. We can use it to make it available for raycast to be targeted on our text or not. Raycasts can be used to detect touch or click on the screen or inside our Unity world, and we can use this checkbox to make it available or unavailable for our raycast target. Next, just let's zoom out and set our text and make it a bit bigger and make it auto resizable for our screen. Let's just utilize this whole space and make it a bit bigger. To do that, first of all, we are going to use these anchor points and we are going to set them to the size we want our text to be. Let's set it to this big rectangle. Whenever Unity resizes the UI elements, it utilizes these anchor points as reference points and resizes them or stretches them by using the anchor points as reference points. So our text element is going to be resized by these anchor points. Now to set our text element fit inside our anchor points, we have to set the left top and right bottom values of our rect transform to 0, 0. Let's start typing 0, and you will notice that as soon as we type, it takes them to the reference points or the anchor points. Now we have a resizable game title for our UI screen. Next, we are going to add buttons to our home screen. To do that, let's go to our panel, right click on our panel, go to UI and add a button. Let's create another button because we are going to need two of them. We can simply create another button by going to the menu, UI and button. Now we have two buttons. Let's just move one of them a bit low so we can distinguish them. Now select the first button and you will notice that we have an image component and a button component attached to our button, and down here we have a click listener list, and we can add as much as listeners as we want, and we can do that by clicking this plus button, and here we are supposed to select the game object with which our script is being attached. Then we have this drop down over here which asks us that our function is going to be used as off, editor and runtime, or just on the runtime only. We can use this plus button to add many other listeners, and we can delete them by using this minus button. Next, inside our button we have a text object as well. The text object inside our button is being shown on top of our button, and you will notice that it's being stretched to the full of our button. And inside our button you will see that there are other anchor points that are not being stretched as of yet. So let's just go to our text component and change the text to play. Let's set the font style to bold and change our font size to, let's say, 20. And down here, let's check the best fit checkbox, and we are going to change the maximum size of our font. Let's try by increasing it, and it's of no use. Let's just set it to something lower. Let's just, for example, let's stick with 20. And now let's go to our button selected, and we are going to resize our button and make it a bit bigger so it aligns up with our title. Let's just consume this box over here, and let's stretch our anchor points to the rectangle. Let's utilize the space down the title. Let's stretch the right one to the game as well. Now go to our inspector and change our values to 0, 0 and 0, 0. So it's being stretched now nicely. Let's go to our text and change the max size to something bigger so it aligns with our geometry. Let's just set it to something like 30 and it looks perfectly nice. Now let's just do the same thing with our second button as well. Go to the button and set its anchor points accordingly to the first play button. Let's set the right one as well. It's a bit less in vertical space. Let's increase a bit above. Set the values to 0, 0 and it will be stretched to the anchor points. Let's just change the font style and best fit and save the maximum size to 30 and change the text to, let's say, exit. Now we have got our buttons resized perfectly and our main screen is being ready now. Next, let's select our canvas object, and here we are going to add a new script component to it. So our script is going to react on the button presses. Let's go to add component and create a new script called UI manager and hit enter. Select the language as C# and create an add. You will notice that as soon as we hit enter, it created a new script and attached it to the canvas object. Now we are going to open this same script inside Visual Studio. We can do that by double clicking on our script and it will open it in Visual Studio. Let's just wait for Visual Studio to load everything. Now inside our script, first of all we are going to delete these two by default functions as we are not going to use them, and the first function we are going to create will be for the play button, and to do that we are going to use public, and public because to utilize them with the other buttons outside the script we need our functions to be public. So let's create play game, and inside our function we are going to write a script. Let's create the another function to react on the exit button. Let's call it public void and let's say exit game. Let's add the required using statement to use scene manager in our play game function. We are going to use Unity engine dot scene management, and now we can use scene manager inside our play game function. Let's write scene manager dot load scene. Here we can give either the scene build index, I am going to explain it in a bit, and we can also give the name, the string name of our scene. Let's give the game scene name, which is game, and let's just save it and go to our Unity. Here all these two scenes should be added into the build settings or the build of our game so that Unity knows which scenes to build. To do that, let's go to the build settings and you will see that scenes in builds are empty. So to do that, let's first of all add the open scene, and it will add the menu scene inside our build. Next, add the game scene by dragging and dropping it over here, and once you do that, you will notice that we have menu scene on 0 index and the game scene on 1 index, and these are the index that we were going to use in the load scene function. Next up, in the exit game function, we are going to use the quit function of our application class. To do that, let's just type application dot quit, let's hit save and go back to our Unity. Let's close the build settings and now just select the button and here add a listener. Let's increase the size a bit so we see everything clearly. Now first of all, let's go to the scene, and here we can select the object canvas where our script is being attached. Now inside this drop down, we can see all the scripts attached to the canvas object. Here select the UI manager script, and inside the child menu you will see the public functions we wrote inside our script: endgame and play game. Let's select the play game, and now whenever we click this button, it is automatically going to call this play game for us. Now select the other button and do the same with it. Select the canvas object from scenes menu and go to the UI manager and select the exit game function available to us from that script. Now our two buttons will work together. Now let's open the game scene by double clicking on the scene icon, and here we are going to do the same thing by creating a new canvas, or we can directly click the panel and it will automatically include the canvas as a parent object. First of all, let's just resize our panel to make it appear like a hood element. To do that, first of all, we are going to drag our anchor point to where we want it to be, and then we are going to change the bottom value to just 0. Now next thing we are going to do is change the color to black so it appears the same as the menu screen. Now it looks like a hood above the game screen. Next we are going to add the back button to our panel. Now go to the text component and change the text to back. Change the best fit to 30, and here we can see our button clearly now. Now let's just zoom it a bit in and so we can see clearly. Now we are going to resize our button and place it on the top left corner. To do that, just drag the anchor points to your desired location, as I'm going to do right now. Perfect. Now let's change the values of left and others to 0 and it looks great. Now next we are going to add the UI manager script to our canvas. Now all those functions are now going to be available to this scene as well. Now we are going to program the back button functionality. Now let's create a new function, public void, let's call it show menu. Inside it we are going to do scene manager dot load scene, and we are going to give menu as the name of our scene. Let's hit save and go back to our scene. Let's wait for it to be loaded. Once the loading is done, now go to our button, add a click listener, select the canvas object. We can do that by dragging and dropping it over here, and inside this drop down, go to UI manager and select the show menu function. Now it is going to react to our function and take us back to the menu scene. Now let's just save this scene. Here we need to reduce our scale to a bit low so we can see the whole scene. And now we can see our HUD. Let's go to the play button and click on it. And now we can see all our screen. Let's hit the back button. And you will notice as soon as I hit it, it is going to take me back to the menu scene. And here you can see that whenever I click play, it takes us to the game scene. Back and forth, back and forth. Now the exit button will not work inside the Unity editor, it only works inside the real actual game. Now let's go to file and let's build a file to test the exit button. Here we have all the scenes we required inside our build, and we are going to build and run it. Let's give some name to it. Let's say test and hit save. It is now going to build a new executable file for us, and you will notice that it is going to build a new player for us. It's packaging all the assets, creating all the required assets for our game, and now it's post-processing the player. Now let's just wait a bit for it to complete. Here you can see a configuration screen popped up for us. Here first of all we have a screen resolution. We can select any resolution. Then we have, let's say we select the required 1024 and 768 resolution for our game. Let's select the drop down and use the same. Then we can make a windowed game by this checkbox. Then we have graphics quality, let's set it to ultra. Then we have a monitor selector. Then we have an input list already mapped from the keyboard for us. Let's hit play and it is going to run the game for us. Here you can see we have the two buttons. Let's hit play and it will take us to the next scene. Let's hit back and it will bring us back and forth. Let's click the exit to exit the executable file.